In terms of software, the GameCube may be one of Nintendo's most interesting consoles, especially relative to Nintendo's reputation amongst the big three today. Ever since the Wii, we've seen a lack in desire to compete from Nintendo, instead feeling content in filling their own niche by sustaining their dedicated fanbase, or penetrating the casual market in search of the same gold mine struck by the Wii, which in hindsight feels like a happy accident. The GameCube was the last Nintendo console that felt like a true step forward without 2 steps back, and a huge factor at play was its third-party support. Resident Evil 4, Beyond Good and Evil, and Rogue Leader, hell, I bought a GameCube to play SSX Tricky. These games really bolstered an already solid library, but more importantly, I think they unknowingly served a greater purpose in giving Nintendo's in-house developers the confidence to experiment, because in the event of failure, there was something to fall back on. You see, I've got this running analogy in which I find the GameCube to be very similar to the Super Nintendo in comparison to their predecessors, the N64 and the NES respectively. There's no denying a vast increase in polish with both systems, graphically and mechanically, but with the Super Nintendo came the birth of several beloved series and franchises that went against the grain at the time. This is no different for the GameCube, however, time and technology introduce new variables, and it's with the GameCube that we see many games defy the boundaries of so many genres that were just becoming established during the era of the N64. In a time when the tidal wave of first-person shooter culture was creeping its way onto consoles, Nintendo went their own way and crafted what is perhaps the best translation of an incredible franchise from 2D to 3D in Metroid Prime. In a time when all Nintendo needed to do was polish up the art style of Ocarina of Time, they took a risk and crafted the most beautiful looking game and most compelling story in the history of The Legend of Zelda. And in a time where sports games were becoming more and more dull with each iteration, Nintendo helped make them fresh again, alongside their partners at Next Level Games with the release of undoubtedly the best soccer game of our time, Super Mario Strikers. I think Strikers went under the radar for a lot of people because it was released so far into the GameCube's lifecycle, just under a year before the Wii hit store shelves in North America. In any case, Strikers is a must-play for any Mario fan, if only to see Next Level's portrayal of these iconic characters. To put it shortly, it's brutal, and so out of place for Nintendo, pulling off the Luigi death stare years before Mario Kart 8. Here we've got Berserk DK, Skimpy Peach, and the infamous cross-chopping Waluigi. Oddly enough, Smash doesn't even come close to matching the pure anger this game exudes, but it makes a little bit of sense, as Strikers plays out a little more like a game of hockey than it does soccer, a twist on the formula that makes it so much more accessible to the player. The sport of soccer hasn't seen much change between video game adaptations, as so many stick to the route of the simulation. Games like FIFA and Pro Ev provide an experience tailored strictly to players of the sport and not necessarily players of games. As for me, I grew up a soccer player from age 5 to 18, as well as spending countless hours alongside friends absolutely addicted to FIFA. And yet, it is still something I've never been able to really sink my teeth into. Movement has always felt like a trudge through the mud, and you really have to commit to every input, as one mispress might see your breakaway come to a very anticlimactic end. Without proper knowledge of the players you step onto the field with and their individual abilities, efforts to create exciting opportunities usually lead to clumsy play. FIFA requires much patience, just like the sport it attempts to showcase, and in those regards, it succeeds. But I can't help but think that in the context of video games, it doesn't cater to player instinct and also lacks the immediate gratification Strikers has. Strikers keeps things simple and accessible from the start. Games consist of 5 a-side with 1 captain and 4 sidekicks that all play similarly without much deviance, and the controls couldn't be more inviting. There's little variance in how an input is received during most maneuvers. You press a button, you perform that action instantly, be it a pass, tackle, or juke, with the obvious exception of shooting, whereas in FIFA, the success of most actions is dependent on the stamina or shot gauges. Strikers removed features like this to not only maintain flow by minimizing punishment, but to also encourage risky play through an added layer of depth to its core mechanics. They're all easy enough to pull off on their own, but playing boldly and brazenly rewards the player with extra advantages. For example, while the juke maneuver on its own won't do much as far as getting in your opponent's head, if performed successfully in close proximity to an opposing player, the user will receive a dramatic speed boost that can mean the difference between a dead play and a goal-scoring opportunity. Similarly is the perfect pass, which is indicated by a green ball trail on a breakaway pass. Perfect passes guarantee higher accuracy for the following shot attempt while slowing down time to not only provide a cinematic view, but also to give the opposing player time to process an opportunity to stop the shot and steal the ball. In Strikers, every arena is lined with an electric fence that stops the ball from leaving the boundaries of the field, and in line with the game's aggressive personality, any player can be bashed or tackled at will without the fear of penalty, even into the electric fence. By turning the conventions of soccer on its head, the pace and intensity of each and every match is increased tenfold, and because of how useful the bash is, a good player will have to use every trick in their arsenal to avoid it, be it perfect passes or utilizing the juke to its full potential. In the right hands, Strikers can prove to be one of the hypest multiplayer experiences on the GameCube, right next to Melee and Double Dash. But admittedly, it has some glaring faults that see it stray just too far from its source material. In the interest of balance, an item system was implemented similar to that of Mario Kart. When players lacking ball possession are bashed by an opposing team, said players are granted an item ranging from banana peels to bomb-ombs raining hot death from the sky. It's a sound mechanic in theory, but unfortunately teeters just beyond the line of being too chaotic, especially when ultra defensive play can already be taken advantage of when players fall out of position on a breakaway. For that reason, I turn the feature off in the options menu, as well as the pointless Bowser attacks and the series-defining Super Strikes, a shot attempt that when performed correctly can result in 2 goals instead of 1. In conjunction with one another, the item system and Super Strikes make Strikers more about chaos rather than strategic play that the game manages so well to keep in balance, as opposed to its sequel. Mario Strikers Charge for the Wii, released just 2 years later, is a great romp in its own right, but all of the features that added a layer of strategic depth to the original, like the perfect passes and jukes, have been removed in favor of character-specific abilities that feel slightly unreliable, and the Super Strike was replaced with the Mega Strike, with the potential of scoring 8 goals instead of 2, turning a minor annoyance into an outright problem. Criticisms aside, Super Mario Strikers is a fantastic title for the GameCube, and with the right amount of tweaking, it becomes one of the best arcade-like soccer experiences out there by blending solid mechanics with pure spectacle. Like many franchise spin-offs, it took a concept, in this case, the sport of soccer, and turned it on its head to create a fresh experience that simultaneously remains faithful to its source material, just like so many other games on the GameCube. Is Super Mario Strikers the most notable example of this concept? No. Is this video framed in such a way so I could present an obscure and absurd sports spin-off in a light of significance? Probably. But that doesn't change the fact that Strikers is a wonderful game and idea that deserves to be preserved, as its legacy leaves it so often forgotten. I know without a doubt that the GameCube houses so many timeless titles I've grown so very fond of that I'll be returning to play for so many years to come, just like I did with Super Mario Strikers.